there, strategic entrepreneurs. I'm Crystal Hunt.
And I'm Michela Mitrani. We're here to help you save time, money, and energy as you level up your writing career.
Welcome to episode 30 of the Strategic Authorpreneur podcast. On today's show, we're talking about what not to do when it comes to keywords, blurbs, and reviews. But first, as always, we'll do a little check-in and find out what have we been up to this week.
So today I want to give you another resource from one of the persons that I'm following, David Gogren, the self-publishing expert, just released a few weeks ago a course for self-publisher, how to start from zero. And I want to show it to people that can see it on YouTube. Basically, this is the logo, starting from zero. I started it actually, and it's super extra, hyper interesting. I highly recommend it if you are on the beginning, but also intermediate stage. And basically, David really tackle every single aspect of the self-publishing process, and he gives a lot of tips about every single step of the way. I'm also recommending this course because there are two books attached. And, you know, we love books and recommendation. One of these is another book that we mentioned a few times, Let's Get Digital, again, from David Gogren, the latest version. And then the other one is Following, which is another free book that he's very, very generously is giving away for free. So this is really a course that is free, completely for free. And really, I think it's useful because it can level up your writing on the self-publishing side. And I do believe David put a lot of work in it. So I really, really recommend it. On the planning and authorly business kind of things, I'm actually planning on doing something a bit different with my lives. If you haven't heard, I release one live on my YouTube channel every single week in Italian, because I want to keep myself accountable, but also help other people in a process that is similar to mine to self-publishing. So, and Crystal, this is something I didn't even tell you, but it's an idea that came up a few days ago. I was thinking of releasing every week in this live something like a report on what I'm doing publishing wise. So, you know, in the next few months, now this is the end of September. In the next few months, I will be releasing quite a few content, and I want to be transparent if I can in that process. I want to try to see if releasing some data, what I'm doing for promoting the books, both on the Italian front and the English front, might be useful to people. So I'm trying to see how can I implement that, how can I share this resource, and if can be useful to people. So I'm just trying to do that, and I'm just deciding what's the format that it is going to have. And now it's your turn to shine, Crystal. What have you been up to?
Well, I am in back to school writing mode. So I am working away on a whole bunch of different stories. And I have been also trying to remember to balance that a little bit, because it's easy to kind of dive back in and get super work focused and forget the part where you're looking after yourself as well along the way. So I'm really trying, as I'm kind of settling into the full-time writing, and without all the summer distractions of outside and everything else, to be making sure that I am setting a really good kind of daily routine that includes moving around, doing some walking. If you're seeing us on video, I look a little more tanned than usual because I have been outside in the sunshine a regular basis on each day, trying to get out to walk around and get some movement in there, because I think it's really great for thinking to be outside, and there's a park near my house so I can walk in the trees, and there's lots of beautiful flowers that other people take care of, which is perfect. And so I can really enjoy some time in the nature, as I like to say. That really does help with the creativity. I find when I'm in a sort of generating ideas stage and digging into new projects, it really does help to have a lot of outside inputs. And so I can listen to podcasts or music while I'm walking, or I can just think about what it is I'm going to work on next. So in between that, just kind of pacing around the house to keep moving. It's easy to get lost in your story and kind of get stuck in your chair. And then your body really starts to complain when you're doing something for too many hours in a day. And I have learned that lesson the hard way a couple of times already in the last 15 years of my writing life. So this time I am determined to do better and make sure that I am building good patterns into my day so that my body can keep up with my brain. So that is mostly what I've been up to. And what I've been reading is actually a really interesting book. It's called The Antidote, and it is by Oliver Burkeman. The subtitle is Happiness for People Who Can't Stand Positive Thinking, which is a really interesting exploration of what is kind of wrong or doesn't work about some of the ways that we have approached happiness as a society. And so he is really digging into some different ways of thinking about thinking and some different ways of thinking about your life. And I've been using that to influence how I'm putting together my patterns in those days. And what I'm really noticing is that so much of our culture is about being really positive and looking to the future and setting all of these goals, and none of that necessarily has anything to do with the moment you're living in right now. And so I'm really trying to focus on enjoying the being of the writerly self and not just the outcomes of being a writerly person. And so instead of just being purely goal focused on, okay, the next release has got to come out on this date and I have to hit all these deadlines and here are all these really specific, actionable, achievable, smart goals, which is great and will move things forward, but you might not love the process very much. And because I've noticed so many people and peers and other authors that I work with and hang out with get burnout really fast. And I'm a health psychologist by background, so I should know better, but I really don't want to hit burnout. I want to have a 40 or 50-year writing career. You know, I'm only 40, I've got some good years left. So I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up in a way that I can really keep doing this for the whole rest of my life, if that's what I choose to do, and not kind of flare out and burn out in a 2 to 5 year period, which is what seems to be pretty common for a lot of indie authors who come at it like a business. So balance is the key for this next little while. And I would highly recommend, if you like the idea of self-help books, but maybe you don't love how you feel or how they, really focus on changing everything and all these rigid structures and all that kind of stuff. This one maybe just make you think a little bit differently about going through your daily life, which is interesting. So I would highly recommend that. And before we dive into the meaty content of today's episode, you know how important reviews are in the book world, and the podcast world is no different. So if you could leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening to this, even just a couple of words or a star rating, that would be fantastic. And we will be forever grateful for your help in other readers discovering us along the way. And thank you to all of our listeners who have left reviews. You are already making a difference. More people are finding us. So thank you very much for that. And now it is time for you to learn from some of our mistakes. We are doing a bit of a roundup today in 3 primary areas. So categories and keywords, blurbs, and also reviews. So let's start off with categories and keywords. And what have you learned along the way about categories and keywords, Michaela, that you would like to share in terms of what did not work or what we should be avoiding?
Yes. So as self-publisher, we know we have to get used to many different things. Keywords and categories is one of those things that sometimes I feel like it's left out the most. And I'm saying that because I did it, and I'm kind of in some point of my career I did that, and I regret it now. Hence why we're going to tell you the mistakes that we made and why it's important for you also to understand why keywords and categories are important for you and your books. So the way I see it, and Crystal, if you have a different opinion on that, please do share it. Keywords are the way a store like Amazon gets to know what your book is about inside and helps other people find it. It's not only that, it's more complicated than that, but you can actually put keywords inside the file, the MOBI file or the ebook file that you're using, and you're gonna upload on one of the book platforms. It's basically a way for you to let the Amazon, in this case, because that's the store that has the biggest and strongest search engine, lets it understand what is your book basically about. And keywords are stuff and things that can be found in the title, in the subtitle of your book, in the description. So that's one of the reasons why we stress the importance of getting those rights. And since we're talking about mistakes, I'm going to tell you a very stupid mistake that I made at the beginning of my self-publishing journey. So, as you might know, when you are in your Amazon dashboard, Amazon KDP gives you the opportunity to put a few number of keywords in. And one thing that you shouldn't do is putting keywords that your book already has. For example, your name, it's already there. Stuff of your title, it's already there. The genre of your book, it's already there. Those were the keywords that I put in. The genre, my name, stuff that goes into the title of my book. So all things that didn't make any difference. And I'm still trying to understand better how that works. I cannot honestly tell you with confidence that I am an expert in that field. I think that's basically a subgenre of self-publishing that needs to be dipped and searched even more deeply. And I think Crystal is going to have a bit more of an in-depth analysis on that. But I do believe you should do your homework in that sense. So keywords is basically the way you give Amazon to let's put your book in front of the right readers. It's just one of the ways. It's not all the way. And we're also going to talk about categories, but I just want to left this segment with another mistake that I made, categories-wise. I didn't take full advantage of that. And I'm still not taking full advantage of that. Because again, if you go on Amazon, as of now, on your dashboard, you're given the possibility to be listed, your book to be listed in two categories, but you could also request to Amazon to be inserted in more categories than that. If I'm not mistaken, Crystal, the number is 10, up to 10 categories. I didn't do that, and I'm still wondering why. Maybe it's because on my to-do list there are a billion different things to do, and for some reason I put that in the very bottom, at the very bottom. But yes, that's definitely another mistake. That's more venues you could put your book, more categories, more way for different readers to find your book. And I'm kind of excited to find out a bit more about your process and what have you been up to in this regard, because I know you have been publishing for way more, which means way more mistakes that I did potentially, and also more books and in different genres. So I think you can add a lot of value on that regard. So what are the categories, keywords, kind of things you shouldn't have done?
Well, there's a few. I think perhaps the most relevant, though, is I started off, I just put in single keywords the very first time I published my book. And I didn't realize that you can actually use phrases. They are keywords or keyword phrases in there. And so that was really interesting because it really multiplied the power of things, where I at first might have used one that was, short story, one that was romance, one that was hometown. But you can actually combine those. You can have short hometown romance or whatever as a single keyword phrase. There's actually quite a lot of room to wiggle in terms of how many characters you can have and how many words you can have. So, I think you really miss an opportunity if you don't cover more ground in there. And I I know that there are keywords, there are lists of keywords that you can use, or keyword phrases that will put you in specific subcategories within each genre. So I'm going to use romance as an example again, just because I know that off the top of my head. But there are words like Christmas. If you use the word Christmas in your keywords, it will put you in holiday romances as a subcategory. And so there are some words that that's their whole purpose, is to get you into a subcategory, which might be helpful if you're looking to be immediately in that category the day you launch. Maybe you put that in as an initial keyword, but once you've submitted to KDP and you've asked them to put you in the other categories you want to be in, you don't need to use that as a keyword anymore. So you can actually swap out those keywords and get a little more mileage, so you're not doubling up like Michele was talking about. You want to cover all that extra ground that you can. I think something else that we forget as well is that there are really different ways of looking at rankings. And this is kind of our transition from keywords to categories. And that is, you need to think about your keywords from the perspective of what will somebody be searching for. And I think one mistake that we make, and I have made in the past, is to be too focused on one category of thing and not the other. So if you're thinking about your keywords in terms of the genre of your book specifically, you need to also widen that up a little bit and think about what kind of heroine or hero do you have in your book? What are the themes? What are the settings? What are some of the main sources of conflict? Those are all opportunities for really strong keyword phrases. And you need to always be thinking from the perspective of your reader, the person who's going to be coming to Amazon and searching for that information, because it's what are they going to put in? It doesn't matter what you would put in to find your book, because you already know how to find it. It matters what the person is going to think of as a word to search for. So we might put in strong female protagonist, whereas, a female hero of a story might be what someone else is going to look for, because they're not writers. So not phrasing it in the same language as we have. So there are a couple of really great resources that can help you in choosing your keywords. And we'll put a link in the show notes to one of the articles from the Kindlepreneur. And I think Dave Chesson at Kindlepreneur is probably one of the strongest voices in terms of analyzing keywords and tools and things like that. And he is the creator of Publisher Rocket, which used to be KDP Rocket. And it is a really helpful tool in terms of breaking down what keywords and categories you're going to want to be using. And he's got some really great help articles. So rather than us trying to recreate all of that, we're going to send you to Dave, because he is definitely a solid voice and has a ton of resources on the kindlepreneur.com blog. You'll find all kinds of things in there that are really helpful. And I think when we come to talk about categories, there's a couple mistakes that we do tend to make. There is more than one way into a subcategory, which is really important thing to think about. So what I mean when I say that is, we often default to our specific genre at the top level of category. So for Michele, it might be science fiction or fantasy, or if we drill down even further, it might be fantasy and then myths and legends as a subcategory. But what we forget is that there's a category at the top level that is fiction and literature. And underneath fiction and literature are subcategories for all of the other genres. So I think it's really important, don't forget that pathway when you are sending in your requests to Kindle to be in different categories in the Amazon store. Make sure that one of the pathways you include is the fiction and literature, and then your genre, and then your subgenre categories all the way down, because that's two separate avenues of people accessing your books. And I changed just that one thing at one point when I submitted some extra categories, and I got a ton more downloads. It was really interesting to see how much of a difference that made. So shout out to Dave Chesson, since it was on his advice that I did that. And definitely for you, worth making that change, and also worth really reviewing your keyword phrases don't change them too often, because I think they don't have a chance to work. If you get in there and muck around with them every week, they're not going to do really what they're supposed to be doing. But I think reviewing them every 3 months or so is a smart thing to do, and reviewing the categories as well to make sure that those are accurate and you're up to date in where you want to be as well for that. Do you have anything else you need to add in there, Michele?
No, I would say just do your homeworks again. That's very important. Reading articles like on Kindlepreneur really do help. I quote, I subscribe absolutely with what Crystal said about Dave. Like, if there is an expert on that side, it's him. The course that he created on Amazon, even Amazon ads, because you have to be able to understand what kind of keywords to use. It's also important for that. So I think what we have been said is that keywords, at one point or another of your self-published career, you're going to use them. You need to use them. So I would say it's better to learn them sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about blurbs next, because once somebody types in a keyword and they find your book listing and they click on it because they like your cover, because of course you've made none of the mistakes that we made with our covers, because we told you all about that a couple episodes ago. And so once they've clicked, now your reader is on your product page. And what the next sort of point of contact is going to be is reading your book blurb or your book description and your sales text there on the online store. And so we will share some of the things that did not really work for us in terms of blurbs. And I know, Michele, this is one of your favorite areas. So I think you should dive in first and tell us a little bit about blurbs.
Okay, I'm just going to let you know what I feel when I have to sit and write my blurb. It's like somebody is shaking me from the very first seconds I start until the very last second. I have nothing against writing a great, mind-blowing description, but having to do that in 150 to 200 words, even less if you're good, if you're really a ninja of the description, is hard. And if there is something that I've learned in the past few months, in my challenge, I have to release one new story every month. That means that I already, at this point, released 9 different descriptions. It's really, really hard. And there's one thing that I've learned is that book description, and again, you can be absolutely not agreeing with me, but for me, it's a science. There are some things that you need to understand in order to make your product look cool on the description side. And there are a couple of suggestions that I can give you. But first, the mistake that I made. One of the mistakes that I made, again, it's connected to the fact that I didn't do my homeworks. And I'm stressing this fact maybe too much, but it's really that important. Crystal, David Gogran, Dave, Nicholas Eric, those are all people that I had to study from in order to understand how to craft an interesting book description. Because before, the mistake that I made was like coming up with the first thing I thought was cool, which is a surefire way to make a very awful book description. And I did that multiple times. I did that in Italian with my science fiction series, which is one of the reasons why I had to make a makeover. I changed it completely, every single one of them. And I have to upload them every single time. You want to save, if you can, that process, that time. Save it, and the important thing that you need to do is just learn the process that there is behind it. And the process is very simple. That's my suggestion, is you go on your category. For example, I'll take my example, okay? Mythological fantasy, okay? What I would suggest you to do after the things that I know is I will go to top 20 sold mythological fantasy on Amazon.com. And then what I will do is I will copy and paste by hand. I'm talking about freehand here, longhand here. Each and every single description. Okay, you can do the first 10. You don't have to do the first 20. But this is a suggestion that I took from Nicholas Eric. Why doing this? Because like when you are copying pasting with your hand, each and every single word, something different happens in your brain. You start understanding a process. And of course, because you are doing that with the top 20, those are the best book in that category. So the author did their job. So they know what they're doing. So it might take some time, but I assure you it's going to help you a lot. Now, I was discussing with Crystal a few weeks ago. She reviews the description, the blurbs of my stories, and she was noticing that there was something that was getting better. First, I take less time in writing them. I remember my average time for writing a description was 5 to 6 hours. 5 to 6 hours. I can write a short story in 5 to 6 hours. And now I was able to average it down around 1 hour and a half for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Of course, it depends on the story, but that's something that she noticed and she's following on that, so she can say that. And the second thing is that I nail more things at the first trial. So there are some things that I'm supposed to convey in the book description. Now I do it for osmosis almost. I just know what that is important for me to say in the first paragraph, in the second paragraph, and then in the ending paragraph. And there are distinction on fiction and non-fiction, but this is basically the biggest mistake that I made, was not doing my homework. The biggest thing that I can suggest you on that side to do is please read what is working in your genre and try to apply it as much as possible. The suggestion that I gave you, you don't have to do it. Copy and paste it with your hand. You can also do it with Word. But I just found that suggestion that was meaningful to me. Find a way that works for you, because your blurb is probably the most important thing after the cover and, of course, the content of the book. So that's basically my 5 cents on that regards. Those are the mistakes I made, and those are the suggestions that I feel I would like to give. I do know, Krista, that you have been doing a makeover recently, so you might be wanting to share a bit more light on your process when you have to do something like a makeover kind of things, or even if you have, like, more generally speaking, something that you did do wrong in the past and that you want to save to the listeners.
Yeah, I think before we jump into that, I just want to reiterate that when you're doing your research, it is really important to look at what's working in your category, but there's some specific areas you can look at. And so I think important is looking at how long are the blurbs in those categories, because you're not just looking at what they've done, but you're looking at how they've done it. What is the point of view in the blurb? And does that match the point of view in the writing? Because sometimes a blurb will be in third person, but a book will be in first person. Usually you try to match it up so that the blurb is an indication of what point of view the book will be in, but there is some variability on that, depending on what genre or subgenre you're in. What is the tone of the blurb? What is the format of it? Like, literally, how are the paragraphs broken up? Is it longer paragraph, short sentence, a little bit of white space? Just throwing everything into one big clumped up paragraph is not easy for people to process visually. It just becomes what we call a wall of text. So I would say on the don't side, don't put a wall of text up there. And one of the ways you can break it up a little bit, give it a little bit of formatting, is you have to use HTML to make a bit of formatting in your book description. The KDP publishing tool makes you put in little beaky brackets with bold and things like that. If you're not fond of HTML, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you probably want to go to the book description formatter on the Kindlepreneur website, and you can use that to make your book description look pretty, and then copy the code and just paste it right into the book description section where you're publishing your book. And that will save you a lot of frustration, because often I think that's what happens to people. They make a beautifully formatted blurb and then they paste it in to the book description box on KDP dashboard, and they don't realize that what happens is all that formatting gets stripped out if it's not in HTML. So definitely use the tool. It's very handy. And I think also when you're crafting that blurb, you need to think of 3 main things. So you really need to hook the readers by pulling them in and giving them a sense of what the story is going to be about. But you don't want to give away too much. You don't want to reveal the key twist or the ending. You want people to have to read the book to get that feeling of satisfaction of understanding how the story ends. So you just want to reel them in enough to really get them interested. And I think there's also a temptation to include in the blurb all the things that happen in a book. And so to be, you know, this this happens at the beginning, and then this happens at the middle, and this happens at the end. And that's not really what's going to interest people. What's going to hold people's attention is who is the main character, what do they want, and what is standing in their way, right? What is the conflict? What are the barriers? What's holding them back? What is going to be the source of the drama and intrigue and interesting stuff that's going to happen in the book? And so you really need to get at the essence of the story and not actually what happens in the story. You want them to read it for what happens. The blurb is just, how is this book going to make you feel, basically? What kind of adventure is this going to be for you? And that's the really key part. And I think the third thing is, if you need to not assume that people will know it's a series. If it is part of a series, you really want to make that obvious in your blurb. It's tempting to think of a blurb as a sales pitch and to be phrasing it nice and broadly, and you're trying to draw everybody into your net and you want everyone to buy and read your book, except you don't. It's very counterintuitive to think like that, but really you only want the people who are going to love your book to buy your book. Because the more of the right readers you get, the better your reviews are going to be, the more social proof you have, the better your ads will do, the more books you'll sell, and then it just creates this positive upward cycle. But if you attract the wrong readers into your book, they're not going to like it. So you really need to make sure that you are filtering out the people who are not going to love it. That's what your blurb is for. If people don't like first person point of view and your blurb is in first person point of view because your book is great, stop them before they buy your book and say how much they didn't like it, because it isn't about them not actually liking your book. It's about them not preferring the point of view it's in. So you can do the same thing by indicating in your book description if there is an unusual twist. Like if you're doing something that is off genre, maybe the story's a little darker, or maybe it's a contemporary romance, but it's sweet and has a happily ever after, and it's not steamy like maybe some others are in that category. You've got to indicate that to your readers so you get that filtered out in the moment. So I think those are three kind of key things that you really should avoid when you're doing a blurb. And you should also avoid having only your own opinion. When you are doing a blurb, it's really good to get some feedback. Use your critique group, use your online communities. If you don't have one, come find us at the Creative Academy for Writers.com, and you can be part of our community there. And you can bounce things off people and get feedback on your blurb and really make sure that other people understand from what you actually put on the page what that story is going to be about. Because as the authors, we are inside the story. And so we often think we have perfectly communicated something through our blurb that we understand because we know the story already. But you have to remember, people buying your book have not yet read your book. So you may have done the perfect job of describing that story, and to anyone who's already read it, it would make sense. But you are selling it to people who have not yet read it. So that's your goal, is to intrigue them enough to entice them into your story world where you can take things to the next level. And so now we're assuming that you've put in some great keywords, you're in the right categories, the right readers have found you, and your blurb has been so cleverly crafted and enticing that they have clicked and purchased your book, and now they've finished reading your book and they're leaving reviews. So we are going to talk a little bit about what not to do when it comes to reviews, and share a couple of stories around how we've handled different things that are related to that. So Michele, did you want to jump in there?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things is that you have to realize not everyone will like your book. It's difficult. Take a deep breath. Okay, now you're in. You have to realize that it's important because it's one of the things that I think can make you or break you as an author. I don't believe there is one single author that is successful that doesn't have a 1-star review or 2 stars review. I think it's something that you have to internalize. Hence, uh, this is the next thing that I'm going to tell you. Do not engage in a person that clearly didn't like your book for reason that might be was something they didn't expect, or they really didn't have to do anything else productive in their day, so they just thought that they might um, say something not super nice about your book. Just don't engage, as unfortunately many authors do. Do engage if there was a problem in your book, for example, formatting problem. And for example, if this person pointed it out and you do find that there is a problem in the structure of your book, maybe a chapter was missing or there was a major structural problem that somehow it slipped through your attention, make sure to reach out to apologize. After all, me and Krista, we told you that you are in customer service in this regard. You are creating stuff, but at the end of the day, these people are paying for your book. Okay, so you have to own it. When there's something you do wrong, you just have to nod, bob your head, and acknowledge that, and try to do better the next time. So that's a don't. So engaging people that are clearly maybe trolling around or doing stuff that is not the most productive for you. One other thing that we explored a couple of times in this podcast is you need to read your reviews. That's actually a part of the business of your entrepreneur journey. And why do you have to do that? It's because we think it's one of the best way for you to understand what's working and what's not working in your stories. Those are feedback from the readers. They can be very, on the point. Some of them can be very witty. Some other might be a bit unpolite or rude, but they are feedback. So you should take them as such. One suggestion that I would give you, and that's something that actually something else that Crystal told me, and I tried. Try not to read those reviews at home, especially if they are maybe 3 stars, 2 stars, or 1 stars. Try to do that outside, maybe in a bar or in a restaurant somewhere else where there are other people. And I actually noticed the difference. It does make a difference. You don't kind of take it so personally. Maybe it's because it's not just you. They are just in your head, and you want to like punch somebody in the face. It's just it's a different environment, so you are maybe a bit more open-minded in that regard. So try and see what happens. Don't read the review alone, the bad reviews alone in your house. Try to do it outside and see how it goes. The other thing that I think it's important, sometimes we spend too much time going from one page to the other of our product. So if we have, for example, I have books in 2 languages in 2 different markets. So if I need to check for a review, I will have to go in several different pages for book 1 of my Omnilogo series, and 2 and 3 and 4. There is actually a faster way, which is like you go to your author dashboard and then see them, each and every one of them, one after the other. I think it's just something important that saves you time. But definitely, these are my suggestion on what to do and not to do reviews-wise. But one takeaway out of this, it's a business, and there are customers that are going to be not in line with your product. They're not going to be happy about it. Try not to take it personally. Try to make the best out of it, and try, if you can, to get what they're telling you. And if that opinion has been repeated more than once, twice, 3 times, and do definitely take mention of that, because it's important for you. I think it really can help you, giving you a feedback on your books, and your next book is going to be better because of that. So those were my suggestion on the review sides. How do you tackle with people that don't exactly enjoy your books? What do you do to them?
Uh, yeah, I think there's a couple things to circle back to in there. One of them is that in addition to reading the reviews outside of your house, and you mentioned reading them all in one place on your author dashboard, and the author dashboard we're talking about is the author central dashboard. So it's not the KDP dashboard. That's not where they collect up all the reviews. But if you have claimed your author profile in Author Central, they will gather all of those together. And I think the coolest feature of that is that you can say how you want them to be sorted. There's a little drop down on the screen, and you can say you want to see highest to lowest, which means it will show you all your best reviews. Or you can say lowest to highest. So if you are in learning mode and you want to find out what negative reviews were in there and what they were saying, then you can click lowest to highest. It also sorts by all the new ones since you were last time in your dashboard, which means you don't have to look through all the old stuff again. You can see just what the new ones are. And one extra important reason to be looking through those is that there's actually fairly frequently that I find once you start to build up a lot of reviews on your books, and some of them might have like a couple hundred reviews, once you start to build up a whole bunch, you become a little bit of a target for spammers because they see that the books are popular and people are finding them. And so you may find that some of your reviews are not real reviews at all. There may be like a 1-star or 2-star review that says, yeah, I didn't like this book. You should go read this other book instead. And then there's a link to that other book. And it's really somebody who's just trying to call attention to their own book or who has been hired by another author to try to drive traffic towards their own book. And when you find reviews like that, or if you find a review that's been posted that very clearly is not talking about your characters or your book, it's actually the wrong information, because that does happen sometimes, you can just click a button that says, request that this review be removed, and you just explain why. And you say, okay, this isn't my book. This is not what the characters are called. This is a junk review. And usually Amazon will review it and pull it down. And that's just really another reason why you want to keep track, because especially at the beginning when you don't have so many reviews, one review like that could really skew your star average, which is going to have an impact on your ads ability to work and on your ability to apply for other promotions and stuff, because many of the promotion sites require that you have a minimum of 3.5 to 4 stars ratings in order to apply for those programs. So you do really want to double check. It also happens occasionally that something goes wrong with the reviewing functionality and a ton of reviews will disappear off your book. But if you're not checking that every now and then, you wouldn't notice. And so I know of multiple cases where, and this has happened to me as well, where I logged in one day and was like, wait, where did all they go? And there was, 30 or 40 reviews had been removed from one of my books, and it was a glitch. And I reported it and they said, oh, we'll figure it out. And then a few hours later, they were back. And so if you're not paying attention to stuff like that, things just disappear and you never really know what's happened. So it is really important to be paying attention there. And I think I have had a couple instances where people have not liked how something ended in a book or found an error. The laws about car seats changed actually. And so one of my older books, there's a girl who's, I think she's 5 at the time, and she's not in a car seat because at the time that I wrote the book, that law wasn't yet in effect. And so now the kids are a lot older that still have to be in car seats in the car. And so that has changed. And somebody was very upset that I was like being unsafe basically with a child in my book. And so I was able to reply and say, okay, here's what's going on. This has been fixed. Like you can download it now from here. And so that's the only time when you really want to engage. And usually when you're engaging with people who have given you some kind of feedback or pointed out an error, just start by saying thank you for taking the time to send this to me. I really appreciate you doing that. And then if something has been changed, then you tell them how it's been changed. I don't usually advocate for people defending themselves against a review that isn't good, because that does not end well. It's someone's opinion of your book. They get to have whatever opinion they want. And even sometimes when they're not correct, it does not help you to argue that. We had one of my children's books actually years ago was reviewed through a national service, and the reviewer said several not very nice things about the fact that they really hate computer generated artwork in kids' books. And actually, the book was watercolor. So it had actually been painted, but the lady who did the painting is an animator. And so, there was sort of that feeling to it. And so even though she wasn't right, arguing with her would not help because she's stating a personal opinion. It's not about being right. It's about just letting people have their say and then learning from it and moving on. So I think really you only engage with people when it is that you have done something wrong and you are apologizing, because there's not really any other situation where the person is going to appreciate you bouncing it back to them and being like, no, your opinion is wrong. I'm not sure about you, but I don't know anybody who loves that. So that is just something to keep in mind, that really only engage when you are looking at it as a customer service opportunity to turn it around in some way. If you're reaching out with a free book that is a fixed version from whatever they pointed out, or you're just thanking them and reassuring them that you'll fix it, you'll look into it, then that's really the only time that's okay. Now it is time for everybody's favorite curious jar. I am going to pull the lid off that. Lots of pretty colors to choose from.
Love them.
Tell me when to stop.
Go now.
Pink one. Okay. Whoa, it's a long one. Oh my goodness. Okay. It's improv time. So you need to tell us a story with the words fire and silver in it. The story must contain two characters who have never met. You have 20 seconds to think and then go.
Okay, I think I added fire and silver. And then can you repeat the rest?
Your story must have fire and silver in it, and the two characters must never have met.
Okay. There is a fire fox that meets for the first time a silver dolphin. They get to know each other, and a friendship begins. And then that friendship blooms into something more deep. And but there is a problem. Like the fox cannot live underwater, and the dolphin cannot live on the ground, right? So the silver dolphin and fire fox sit and think how they could solve this issue. So their love is at stake. They either have to decide to just move on and not to see each other again, or to find a solution. So what's going to happen? So the Firefox it's going on the human village, and in this human village there is a hunter. And I'm going to wrap up the story now, so it's not going to get too long. It might be actually the story that I can use for my 12 by 20 challenge. But the Firefox goes to the village and convinces a hunter to build, how do you call in English that building that can be on top of the water?
A boathouse or a float house?
Yeah, something like that. So convinces him to build one of these. And so the fox can go over water, and the dolphin can go up, and they can see each other, maybe. That's the story that I came up with. There was, I think there was the law of components and stuff. I probably needed, I should have taken 10 more seconds to think of the wrapping up, but yeah. Silver dolphin and fire fox meets and share the love together.
There you go. You wrote a love story.
That's what I got. And I bought you like a minute or 2 minutes of time. So you
Well,
have...
I was busy listening to your stories. There you
So it
go.
was interesting. Okay, that's what I've
Mhm.
got. That's what I can come up with 10 seconds. And we need to
Okay.
find out the person that wrote that message. Just so you know, because we need to corner that
Yeah.
person and have a conversation with her or him. Okay. Now it's your turn. Give us the very best you got.
Okay, I'm gonna take 10 seconds to reset my brain because now all I can see is a firefox and a dolphin.
Yeah, I think like it was like on the fantasy side, and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
were
no,
talking
it's
about
good.
kids' book, and
Yeah. Once upon a time, on a mountain far away, was a silver dragon named George. George was quite lonely, actually. There wasn't a lot of other silver dragons anywhere to be found, and people had become kind of unfriendly of late. They had heard all these stories about how dragons breathed fire on everyone and were quite horrible and were attacking villages, and they'd seen, the Hobbit, and Smog was just really giving every other dragon a bad rap. And so George was quite sad. And what he really wanted was a friend. And so he decided to go on an adventure into the nearby village to try and make himself a friend. So George packed his little dragon pack and set off through the forest, crushing a few trees along the way. And occasionally he would meet some people who would run screaming, but he tried to make friends with him, but they didn't seem to understand what he was saying at all. And every now and then he would try to talk, and a little bit of flame would actually come out of his mouth. So it's possible that he did burn down like small pieces of the forest on his way to the village. But eventually he got there, and there was nobody left. Everyone had gone. The people that he had scared had run as fast as they could back to the village. And the only person who was left was one small human, and her name was Candace. And Candace was sitting in the middle of her bedroom playing with a set of little plastic dragons. She had knights and princesses and dragons, and the knight had been captured, of course, and was being guarded by the dragon. The princess was about to do the rescuing. And so when George appeared, she immediately sprang up with her little plastic sword that she had stolen from the prince, of course. He didn't need it, he was captured. And so she started yelling and running at George because she was going to defend herself. And he screamed in his dragony way, and was like, wait, don't. And she sort of stopped. And then they looked at each other for a while. And she tried to talk to him, and she said, who are you? What do you want? And he said, all I'm looking for is a friend. And because she was a little girl and not quite as deaf as all the grown-ups to other ways of speaking, she understood what he was saying. And she said, oh, so you're not going to burn my house down? And he said, no, not on purpose. Only by accident, but maybe it would be better if we were outside for the rest of this conversation. And so she told the tied up prince to stay where he was, and she abandoned her plastic dragons, and they went outside. And then they became friends. That's all I got.
love it. Way more structured than mine. I can see that you've been writing this kind of genre way more than I did. So you
It's
see,
a little hazy around the conflict and resolution stuff, but I feel like,
you know what?
10
Just for like
seconds.
somebody that had like 20 to 30 seconds, like it's pretty good stuff.
The characters have names anyway. There you go.
They even
That
have
always
names,
makes it immediately more humanizing. We would love to hear your answer to the Curious Jar question, which in this case is an improv story, which you will get to type, or you can record yourself if you like and share a link to a YouTube video somewhere. That would be a fun way to share your improv story, but it must contain silver and fire and have 2 characters. Those are the only restrictions. And be fit for public consumption. Let's just go ahead and put a PG-13 rating on whatever we're going to share on the public website. And
For show notes, links to resources that we mentioned today, and for coupons and discounts on the tool that we really love, please visit us at thestrategicauthorpreneur.com.
Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our next episode, where we'll be talking about things that have gone wrong during the publishing process and what you can do to avoid having the issues that we have had. In the meantime, happy writing, and we can't wait to hear your stories.
See you next week.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Gotta change the view on the thing. Okay.
All start.
Now I actually look at the camera.
But I'm happy that we also share the love for the chocolate side of things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There are some people that don't like chocolate, so you can't.
I know, it's weird, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. Those people are aliens, clearly.
That's what I say. Aliens.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 30 of the Strategic Authorpreneur podcast. On today's show, we're talking about what not to do when it comes to keywords. Nope. I'm going to try that again. No, there are no verbs in here.